My parents and a toxic sister got me fired from my real estate job with false accusations because she failed at her startup venture. 7 years later, they showed up at my expensive condo saying she passed away in a car accident. I need to explain everything in detail because this story has a lot of context, and I want you to understand how we got here. 7 years ago, I was forced to resign from my promising position at a prestigious real estate firm. It happened just 3 months after I started, all because of malicious rumors that my sister Emma spread about me. The only reason behind this sabotage was her failed attempt at starting her own business while I was succeeding in my career. It shouldn't have come as a surprise to anyone. She had never shown the dedication or work ethic that I had. But somehow, Emma and our parents were devastated when her business venture failed while I was thriving in my new job. To my parents, James and Linda Carter, Emma had always been the golden child. Nothing I did was ever good enough compared to her. So I wasn't particularly shocked when they sided with her and started pressuring me to quit my job. They even went as far as suggesting I should help with Emma's failing business instead. Obviously, they were trying everything they could to make sure I wouldn't succeed in my career, just because Emma couldn't handle her own failure. But I wasn't about to give up everything I'd worked for. I reached out to my grandparents and convinced them to help me secure a small loan to tide me over. That's how I managed to keep my apartment and stay in my job against all odds. By then, I had already moved out of my parents' house. Not that I was welcome there anymore. I don't think I ever truly was. The environment had become so hostile that I could tell they were on the verge of kicking me out, so I left on my own terms before they had the chance. Later that week, unfortunately, Emma somehow found out that I was still working at the firm, and she completely lost it. She went crying to our parents about how unfair life was. That's when things took a dark turn. Emma, along with some of her bitter ex-business partners, started spreading vicious rumors on our company's internal messaging system about me embezzling funds. At the real estate firm, in the corporate world, accusations like that are taken very seriously. As the whispers started circulating through WhatsApp groups and office chat channels, things spiraled out of control quickly. The HR department caught wind of the rumors, and before I knew it, I was under investigation. Somehow, they even discovered falsified transaction records in my work computer. I suspect Emma or someone she knew had connections in IT. It wouldn't have been hard to plant fake evidence. The office was an open environment with people constantly coming and going, and my computer was often unlocked while I showed properties to clients. My colleague Sophia, who worked in the same division, stood by me throughout the ordeal. She knew my work ethic and vouched for my character, but against manufactured evidence and mounting accusations, her support wasn't enough. Several coworkers, either bribed by my sister or just eager to join the drama, claimed I had offered to cut them in on fraudulent deals. The situation became impossible to defend. Even though I knew I was innocent, and Sophia knew it too, the company executives had already made up their minds. Despite my pleas and attempts to prove my innocence, I was forced to resign to avoid legal charges. They made it clear, either leave quietly or face prosecution. 1 month later, the aftermath was devastating. After losing my job, I literally had nowhere to go. My parents had poisoned my grandparents against me, telling them about the alleged embezzlement. They wanted nothing to do with me anymore. After all, where there's smoke, there must be fire, right? The evidence seemed irrefutable at that point, and I can't entirely blame them for not believing in my innocence. The fabricated transaction records were just too convincing. I had burned through my savings trying to defend myself and maintain my apartment during the investigation. The small loan I had taken out still needed to be repaid, and I knew I couldn't default because my grandparents were co-signers. I found myself homeless and unemployed, with only a couple of months before the first loan payment was due. at Sophia's home. The only silver lining in this nightmare was that the company agreed not to press charges if I resigned quietly. They were more concerned about avoiding bad publicity than pursuing legal action. Looking back now, I recognize what a huge blessing that was, though at the time it felt like cold comfort. During those dark days, Sophia became my lifeline. When everyone else had turned their backs on me, she and her parents took me in. They offered me a spare room in their modest suburban home. No questions asked. I remember sitting at their kitchen table that first night, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, feeling simultaneously grateful and ashamed. "You can stay as long as you need to," Sophia told me, her voice firm with conviction. "We'll figure this out together." But I couldn't bear the thought of being a burden. Within days, I started applying for any job I could find. I finally landed a position as a cashier at a local grocery store. The pay was minimal, but it was a start. I lived as frugally as possible, saving every penny I could. My lunch consisted of discount sandwiches from the store, and I walked everywhere to save on transportation costs. 1 month later, after 4 weeks of grueling work and extreme budgeting, I had saved enough for a security deposit on the cheapest apartment I could find. It was in a run-down neighborhood, and I had to share the cramped space with 3 other people, but it was something I could call my own. The day I moved out of Sophia's house, her mother hugged me tight and slipped me a $100 grocery store gift card. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "Don't let them break you." The following years, I threw myself into work with a determination I didn't know I possessed. My days became an endless cycle of different jobs: receptionist during the week, waitressing on weekends, picking up bartending shifts whenever I could. I barely allowed myself time to rest because I knew there was no safety net beneath me. The exhaustion was bone deep, but each paycheck felt like a small victory. Career progression. Those years are mostly a blur now. A carousel of name tags and uniforms, different job titles, but always the same determination. I worked as everything from a receptionist to a bartender, each role teaching me something new about people and business. None of it was easy, but each job was a stepping stone. Eventually, I managed to move from that cramped shared apartment to a small studio of my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and I didn't have to share it with anyone. The real turning point came when I was working as a receptionist at Blue Harbor Real Estate. Every day, I watched the agents coming and going, closing deals, building their portfolios. I found myself thinking, I could do this too. I already had experience in the industry, even if it had ended badly before. When an entry-level position opened up, I gathered my courage and applied. "We'll give you a chance," the manager said after my interview. "But you'll have to start from the bottom." I didn't care. It was my opportunity to prove myself again in the industry I loved. I threw myself into the work with everything I had. Without a college degree, I knew I had to work twice as hard as everyone else. But what I did have was years of experience dealing with all kinds of people, and I knew how to connect with clients. Present day. Last year, something amazing happened. I was promoted to senior management. After years of climbing the corporate ladder, I finally reached a position I never thought possible after everything that happened. The day I received my promotion, I sat in my office, my own private office, and cried tears of joy. To celebrate, I bought my dream home. After years of selling other people's properties, I finally had one of my own, a beautiful condo in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods. I won't pretend to be modest about this. I make 6 figures now, and I'm one of the top performers in my company. Sometimes I think about going back to college to finish my degree, but honestly, I'm proud of what I've achieved without it. The past 7 years. During all this time, I had zero contact with my family, and they never tried to reach out either. I was perfectly fine with that arrangement. The truth is, I never missed them. How could you miss people who tried to destroy your life? I stayed in touch with some friends from my previous job. And of course, Sophia remained my closest friend. She's the one person who stood by me through everything, even though we'd only worked together for 3 months. The only people I deliberately cut out of my life completely were my parents and Emma. I made it crystal clear to everyone I knew that I didn't want to hear anything about them, good or bad. I didn't care what was happening in their lives, and people respected that boundary. Recent events. That's why I was completely blindsided when my parents showed up at my condo last month with the news that Emma had died in a car accident. I was standing in my kitchen, preparing dinner, when the doorbell rang. Opening the door to find James and Linda Carter standing there after 7 years of silence was surreal. Later, they explained they had practically begged Sophia and her parents for my address. They kept playing the grieving parents card. We've already lost one daughter. We can't bear to lose another. Eventually, Sophia gave in, though I understand why. It's hard to stand firm against grieving parents, even when you know the complicated history. The moment they saw me, they rushed to hug me, tears streaming down their faces. "We're so proud of you," they said, words I'd never heard from them before. It felt strange and hollow. These same parents, who had never once acknowledged my achievements when I was younger, out of fear it might make Emma jealous. I tried to be civil, despite everything they'd done to me. We sat in my living room, making awkward small talk, while they told me about the car accident that took Emma's life. They cried, and I found myself automatically consoling them, even though my own emotions were a confused mess. The confrontation. Before anyone calls me a doormat, let me explain. Seeing your parents after 7 years of complete silence does strange things to your emotions. Yes, I never forgave Emma, and I certainly hadn't forgiven them, but I'm still human. Watching two people grieving their child, even if that child had tried to ruin my life, stirred up complicated feelings I wasn't prepared for. I couldn't bring myself to slam the door in their faces, even though part of me wanted to. Finally, they addressed what they called the elephant in the room. They claimed they wanted to apologize for everything that happened at my previous job. According to them, they had been blinded by Emma's failed business venture and their desire to protect her. When Emma accused me of embezzlement and convinced them I didn't deserve my success, they decided to set things right, which meant helping her destroy my career. "We had no idea you were innocent until we talked to Sophia recently," my father said, his voice breaking. "Emma had been feeding us lies about you since you left home." They claimed that although they were initially skeptical, Emma had been so convincing in her accusations that they eventually believed her story about me stealing company funds and using the money to secure my position. She had apparently even convinced them that I had sabotaged her business ventures to make her look bad. The breaking point. Something in me snapped. 7 years of pent-up anger came pouring out. I found myself shouting at them, my voice echoing off the walls of my expensive condo. "You have no right to come here and apologize 7 years after you tried to destroy my life." I screamed. "And now you're trying to blame everything on Emma just because she's not here to defend herself? That's despicable." That's exactly what I thought they were doing, trying to shift all the blame onto their dead daughter to absolve themselves. In my mind, they had known the truth all along and had actively helped Emma orchestrate my downfall. The timing of their appearance right after Emma's death seemed too convenient. The confrontation continues. "You're only here because you lost your precious golden child," I spat out, my voice trembling with rage. "Now you need a backup daughter to take care of you when you're old, someone to give you grandchildren." Well, I see right through you both. They seemed genuinely shocked by my outburst. They insisted they weren't trying to blame Emma, that they truly had no involvement in planting evidence or bribing my colleagues. But I wasn't having any of it. I kept yelling until they finally left. Their shoulders slumped in defeat. Later that evening, after they left, I immediately called Sophia. Despite my deep love and trust for her, I was angry that she'd given my contact information to my parents without consulting me first. "Marie, I'm so sorry," Sophia said when I confronted her. "They seemed so desperate to reach you, and like you, I found it hard to say no to grieving parents. But let me tell you what happened when they first came to see me." Sophia's revelation. What Sophia told me next made me question everything. When she initially refused to give them my address, she had accused them of ruining my life with their lies. To her surprise, they seemed genuinely confused about what she meant. They repeated the same version of events they'd told me, and according to Sophia, their shock at learning the truth appeared genuine. When I told them about the rumors that suddenly started circulating at work, about the suspicious timing of the evidence appearing on your computer, and how none of it added up, they looked completely blindsided, Sophia explained. At first, they didn't want to believe me. They said they couldn't let me paint you as completely innocent. But the more details I shared, the more I could see the realization dawning on their faces. "Marie, I think they really didn't know." Late night reflection. As I sat in my condo that night, staring out at the city lights, Sophia's words kept echoing in my head. Could it be possible that Emma had orchestrated everything on her own? That my parents had been nothing more than unwitting pawns in her scheme? And if that was true, did it change anything about how I felt? The truth is, even if they weren't directly involved in planting evidence or spreading rumors, they were far from innocent. My entire life, they had favored Emma, dismissed my achievements, and created an environment where her jealousy and bitterness could flourish. 1 week later, update. After a week of processing everything, I've made my decision. I'm not going to reach out to them. I've spent 7 years building a life without them, and I can spend the rest of my life doing the same. Some of my friends think I was too soft, even letting them into my home that day. But as Sophia points out, at least I got some closure. Emma was indeed clever. If she had put half as much effort into her business as she did into destroying my career, she might have succeeded. But speaking ill of the dead won't change anything now. 2 weeks later, I was just getting home from work when I saw them, my parents sitting in their car outside my condo, waiting for me. As I stepped out of my vehicle, they approached, insisting we needed to address the situation to move forward. "We've already lost one daughter," my mother pleaded. "We can't bear to lose another." I felt a laugh bubble up, bitter and cold. "You can't lose what you never had," I told them. "You never treated me like a daughter. I was always just Emma's shadow." The confrontation escalates. When they refused to leave, I called the police right in front of them. That's when they started shouting about how unfair I was being. Once again, they played the grieving parents card, but this time it had no effect on me. They twisted my words, accusing me of thinking I was too good for them now that I'd made it big in real estate. That wasn't what I meant at all. I was talking about emotional distance, not financial success. But at that point, I didn't even bother correcting them. "You know what?" "Yes, that's exactly right," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I worked hard for everything I have. I did it all without any help from my family." They stood there cursing at me until the police arrived to escort them off my property. Only after they were gone did I allow myself to relax, sinking into my favorite armchair and taking deep breaths. The following week, I've decided to speak with a lawyer about getting a restraining order. I'm not sure if I have grounds for one since they haven't explicitly threatened me, but this situation is getting out of hand. I love my condo. It's the first place that's truly felt like home, and I refuse to give it up because of them. 2 months later, final update. It's been a quiet couple of months since the police incident. My parents haven't tried to contact me again. Through my grandparents, who recently reached out to apologize for their past behavior, I learned that my parents sold their house and moved to the suburbs, claiming there were too many memories of Emma there. I'm focusing on my career and my true family, the friends who stood by me. Sophia and I are closer than ever, and I'm building the life I want. I've forgiven my grandparents. They did help me when I needed it, after all. But that's as far as my forgiveness extends. I'm going to create my own family, on my own terms. Life is good now, and I'm at peace with my decisions. Thank you all for following my story. I hope my next update will be about something more positive.